Hey guys, what's up? Today I will be doing an album review on Puked, Genital, Purulency by the band Cenotaph. Now, Cenotaph is a band from Turkey, and this album was released in 1998, and it was their second full-length album. Now, Cenotaph plays a very, very unique and strange style of brutal death metal that is most definitely best performed their signature sound right here on this second record. Puke Genital Purulency has this very claustrophobic and very scary style of brutal death metal. I mean, the riffs are very chromatic and they're really chaotic, and everything is kind of comes across as a bit of a jumbled mess at first. But what I really respect about this album is that they really find a very creative way to control that insanity and to control like the really weird chromatic riffs that don't make a lot of sense. Because when it comes to brutal death metal, a lot of other bands will just pummel you with either like speed or walls of sound, which is awesome. But I think what Cenotaph does very differently is pretty unique, because they don't really pummel you with speed that much. It's just these really like creepy sounding chromatic and just like really offbeat riffs, which I think are the highlight of this album. And there's definitely a tad bit of an avant-garde influence. You can definitely tell in the riffing style. The harmonics, the chromaticism, and a lot of the chords used just sound very dissonant. And it really creates quite the unsettling atmosphere on this album, because combined with the vocals by Batu, I think is how you pronounce his name, that man is a beast behind the mic. The crazy, absurd song titles, the really freaky and weird lyrics and samples, you get quite the disturbing and very creepy sounding record. And another thing I really like about this album is there are some super catchy riffs. Like the dissonance is done in a way where it's not like really forgettable or just filler stuff. The dissonance is really creative, and a lot of it is really rhythmic. The first track on here, Mutilated Genitalia and Lack of Resurrection Under Effective Punch, probably now my second favorite song on the album. But it has this one riff with the pinch harmonic. If you've heard the song, you know what I'm talking about. But it happens like maybe about a minute or a minute and a half in the song, and that riff will just stick in your head all day long, because it's so bouncy, but it's also really dissonant, and just the way the harmonics are hit is very, very catchy. Another thing that is definitely worth mentioning on this album are the backup vocals. They sound so deranged, and they're this like high-pitched wail, but the production is like really muffled, and it kind of works to the backup vocals' advantage. And I know someone else did the backup vocals. Let's see. Gurkum Akalin. My apologies for butchering that. But the backup vocals on here are absolutely terrifying. I mean, it just really adds a whole nother layer to the chaos and just the crazy and eerie sound that Cenotaph brings to the table. And overall, this is just a really, really well-balanced brutal death metal album. Really, really good mix between creative songwriting, really wild riffs, and almost like comedic / theatrical use of pinch harmonics. And it's just like, when you hear these harmonics, you're gonna put a smile on your face if you like that kind of stuff, because they're just done really tastefully, and it's a very creative and refreshing listen. The bass playing on here is also really good. I know the bass player did write a fair share of the music, and yeah, the bass playing is pretty weird too, because there's a lot of like really interesting bass breaks, but they're not the usual like brutal death metal bass breaks like da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It's like it's just more use of like dissonance on the bass, and rhythm section is really, really locked in on here. Bass and drums are doing some super cool stuff, which adds another interesting layer to the listen. The drum work is another thing that is pretty well done on here. Like I said, The speed is definitely not the biggest highlight or really even a highlight of this album because it's all pretty mid-paced, but some of the drum work does get like fairly technical. I really like he does a lot of like two-handed ride stuff, just like a lot of fills on the cymbals, which I've always thought sounded pretty neat. And yeah, overall, this is just a really, really solid classic album. Maybe not the best place to go to if you've never ever heard brutal death metal, but if you're starting to get more into the genre, as I am, I would definitely recommend checking out this album because I think it's like one of the few records I've ever heard that I would like be able to say like sounds like 100% original. Like I can't think of any other band to compare this to. I mean, I'm sure there probably are some that sound like this, but at least off the top of my head, I can't really think of another band that sounds like what Cenotaph sounded like on this album. And I think that is a pretty cool thing. And yeah, just really, really great album. Crazy, crazy samples. Absolutely ridiculous song titles. Good mix of like trem riffs, like dissonant harmonics, and you got like a couple nice chunky riffs on here. My favorite song on here is probably the one with the craziest name, Verbalized Opinions About Intravaginal Umbilical Corded Fetus in Uterus. And like the intro riff of that song just has this super bouncy, chunky riff. And yeah, Cenotaph just really hit the nail on the head with this album. Totally brutal, claustrophobic, scary, and dissonant. It is really, really awesome. I'd give this album probably like a 9.5 out of 10. We'll see how it ages. I'm assuming it's going to age well. But I've only really discovered this album in the last like maybe month or two. But it is definitely climbing up the list very quickly to be one of my favorites. And I would definitely recommend checking this out if you have not heard it already. Cenotaph, Puked, Genital, Purulency from 1999. Thanks for watching.